Hi, today we're gonna go through a tutorial on how to create and run an Android project with Google Maps integration. So before we get started, here's what we're gonna accomplish. First, we're gonna create an Android project. Then we're gonna add the Google Play library. We're gonna obtain an API key and configure the project. Next, we're gonna configure an emulator to use for testing. And finally, we're going to run it. A few assumptions before we get started. In order for you to go through this tutorial, you have to make sure that you have downloaded and installed the Android SDK. If you have not, then please visit the link displayed right here in order to get that all set up. Next, you should also make sure that you have downloaded the Google Play Services SDK. If you have not done so, the link where you will find directions and the download links would be this one right here. A couple of things about the tutorial. I'm going to be using Eclipse as my development environment. And most of the tasks that I'm going to be performing will be done through Eclipse, through the UI, rather than through a command line, even though that is another option if you choose to go that route. So let's get started. First, we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up Eclipse. I am going to open up a new workspace. It'll be just a moment as Eclipse loads. Alright, now from here I want to create a new Android project, so I'm going to go up to File, New, and Android Application Project. I'm going to call my application Map Demo. You can call yours whatever you'd like, and feel free to leave the defaults. Click Next. Click Next again. If you'd like to configure an icon, feel free. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the default for the sake of this demo. We're going to select to create a blank activity. We're going to click Next. You can leave the default names and finish. Taking a moment as the project gets set up accordingly. And here we are. Our next step is going to be to add the Google Play Services project into our Eclipse workspace. So in order to do that, go ahead and click on File, Import. We're going to select Android and existing Android code into the workspace. Click Next. Here we're going to have to browse and find our Google Play Services library. So that depends on where you installed it. Whenever you did the installation, I'm just going to go ahead and drill down and find mine. There it is. I'm going to select OK, and I'm going to finish. Our next step would be to add the appropriate dependency on the Google Play Services in our project. So if you go on the left-hand side and right-click on your project name, so for me that's the Map Demo. I'm going to go all the way down to Properties and select that. Now here in the Properties, we want to select Android, and on the bottom half you have the option to add a library, so I'm going to go ahead and click the Add button. And here's the Google Play Services library that we just added. I'm going to select that and click OK. And finish. Alright, so now our project is set up with the correct dependency in order to call the Google Play Services. The next thing we want to do is make a few changes to the code so that we could get an example up and running. So our main activity is actually going to extend fragment activity. And make sure you import the right classes. Now the next thing we want to do is take a peek at the layout. So on the left hand side, if you go down into your resource folder, layout folder, and you'll see your activity main.xml if you left the defaults when we started up the project. Now we actually want to edit the XML, so we're going to go ahead and click on the XML tab. And here we can go ahead and get rid of all of this code, and we're going to replace it with our own that's going to display a map. So if you go back into the presentation, we'll grab that code. This is the code for just displaying a map fragment. It's simple, but it's going to prove that we have our maps up and running. So here we are. Go ahead and save that. And we're also going to create a map object in our main class, and here's the snippet for that piece. If you go back into your main activity, and go ahead and create that. Got a few formatting issues. I apologize for that. And you want to make sure you import the right classes. Alrighty. Looks like we're good to go in here. Now our next step is going to be to obtain a Google API key. The API key is a bit of a security feature so that your application can call the Google Services. And it's a way of just making sure that they don't have unauthorized users, and if you are leveraging some of their paid services, that they know exactly who's calling them. So here's the link where you will find the Developers Console by Google. Now before we go on to this step, it does require a Google account, so if you use Gmail or any of their other services, then you're good to go. But if you do not have a Google account, you should go ahead and create one so that you could obtain the key. Now if you go to the Developers Console, it'll bring you up to a home page. I already have a few projects in there, but we're going to create another one and get a key for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create Project. I'm going to call it Map Demo. You can call it whatever you'd like. And it's going to be a few moments as the Developers Console creates your new project. There we go, it's all done. Now on the left hand side you have the link for APIs and authorization, and that's where we want to go. Here you're going to see a list of all of the Google services. There's quite a few, several dozen I think. For our purposes, we're only interested in the Google Maps, so if you go ahead and scroll down, you can find the Google Maps API. And here it is, Google Maps Android API version 2. We're going to go ahead and click on that off button so that it will turn on. Alright, says it's enabled. If you scroll back up to the top, you will see all of your enabled services, and here it is, the Google Maps Android API version 2, and it is on. Now our next step is to obtain the proper credentials. So on the left hand side, if you click on credentials, here you want to get a public API access key. So that's the second option. I'm going to go ahead and click create new key. And it gives you an option of the different types of keys that you could obtain. Since we're using an Android app, we're going to get an Android key. Here you actually have to provide a certificate fingerprint and your package name. And you can find all of that information within Eclipse. So we're going to go back to our project and get all that stuff. So back in Eclipse, if you go up on top and click on Window and Preferences, you'll get a menu pop up. Now where you want to go is under Android. If you expand that, you have the build option. If you click on that, you will see your SHA-1 fingerprint, and that's the item that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And you should also note the package name of your project. So for mine, it's right over here on the left. It's com.example.mapdemo. You're going to need to remember that and put it in for Google. So let's go back and do that. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and paste my API key, insert a semicolon, and then type my package name. So for me, that was com.example.mapdemo. And then go ahead and click create. And in a couple of moments, you see that you have your Android key that's generated. It's this 40-character string, and it's identified as your API key. You want to go ahead and copy that. Then go back into your project, and we're going to paste that along with all the proper credentials that your application needs to run. So in order to get your project set up to run the maps, you want to go ahead and open up your Android manifest. Once again, we want to edit the XML, so select the XML tab. And here we're going to put quite a few bits of code, so I have them already set up, so we can just simply copy and paste. Go back into Eclipse and paste that in here. So the permissions reside within the manifest tags, but outside of the application tags, so make sure you paste appropriately. I just want to do a little formatting here, clean it up a bit. When you copy and paste those items, do make sure that you edit the package name to correspond to your package. So for me, that would be com.example.mapdemo. You want to make sure that you're setting it up with the right package. Otherwise, things won't work. Alrighty, I think that was that. Now there are a few more permissions that we need to go ahead and insert in here. Now these next metadata tags are going to go within your application tags. So one of them is going to be for your API key. The other one is for the GMS version. So the GMS version you could leave as is, but for the API key you do want to make sure you go ahead and paste the key that you got off of the developer's console. So let us go back and grab that. And we're going to paste it in here. Let us save it. And we are almost ready to go. Now the last step before we can actually run and test our code is to set up an emulator. The way you do that would be if you go up to Window, Android Virtual Device Manager. That'll bring up the manager. As you can see, I already have a few of them set up, and I will walk you through the steps of setting one up for yourself. If you click on New, you'll get this window pop up for your device name. It could be anything you'd like. You can select whichever device you'd like to target for this particular run. Just going to do next this one. Now this next step for your target is quite important if you are running maps. In order for you to be able to successfully test within an emulator, you're going to have to select an Android target. If you select the Google APIs target, your code will not run in the emulator. So it's a little bit not intuitive, since you think that Google APIs would be the normal target if you're trying to call the Google services. However, you'd be wrong, so do make sure that you target an Android version. For me, that would be 4.4.2. And you can leave all of the other settings as is and go ahead and click OK. Now, I'm not actually going to create a new emulator because that'll take quite a few minutes to launch, and I'm not going to make you guys sit through that. One more thing you want to check before you run is what target your project is run against. So if you go over to your project on the left hand side and right click, go down to Properties. If you select the Android tab on the left, do verify that your target name is an Android version, not the Google APIs version. Once again, make sure your target is Android, so for me that would be 4.4.2. If you select the Google APIs version, you will be unable to test the Google Maps within your emulator. Now, if you actually have an Android device, these steps are not necessary for you. If you do have an Android device, you can simply test your code on it with no issues. However, if you don't have an Android device available for testing and you do want to test your Google Maps functionality, you need to go through some of these checks before you can actually run. Now, one last thing, we're not done with setting up our emulator. There are a couple of packages that you actually need to manually install on your emulator in order for your code to run. So once again, that's because with the latest Google update, Google Maps is pretty much impossible to test in an emulator the normal way. So you have to go ahead and do some manual installs and change some of the settings in order to get that going. Here are the two links. They're direct download links where you can get the necessary APKs if you want to test your Google Maps code in an emulator. We can go ahead and download those. So when you go on the link, you will see this site. You can simply go ahead and click download and it'll download them. And same thing for the second package. Now, I've already downloaded them, so there's no need for me to make you guys sit through the downloads. Your next step would be to go ahead and install them. So if you look here, these are the commands that you should issue in order to install. The only difference is you want to give the full path. So if yours are on your C drive, then you do want to give your C drive, maybe they're in your downloads, wherever you place them, and then the name of the file. Same thing for both of them. So do make sure you give the full path, otherwise you'll run into some issues. And all you got to do is open up Command and execute these two commands. And when you do that, I'll show you what that looks like since I've already done it. So here we're doing adb-e install and then providing the path to our APKs. It actually ends up killing a few processes on the server and then it installs the right packages. The process itself takes a few minutes, so if you hit enter once you type the command and it seems like you're waiting a bit, that's okay, that's normal. It's just a bit of a timely process, so do be patient with it. Make sure you've installed both of them. And once you've gotten all of those steps done, you can go ahead and click Run. And for our project purposes, we have a simple map, and this is what our final product looks like. So if you followed along and performed all the steps, you've successfully created a project that calls the Google Maps APIs, and you actually were able to test it within the emulator. Thanks.